Hey guys, Comics Kid 2099 here. Last week I did a review of DV8, the first like 6 issues. I think the book was called Neighborhood Threat, and I mentioned last week that I've been in a huge Wildstorm mood lately. And it turns out when I bought that DV8 book, I also in the same trip had bought Majestic while you were out. And so I went ahead and read it. If you hear the door over there kind of banging, it's my cat trying to get in, and at first I thought he would leave it alone, but he's not. So anyway, that's going to keep making noises throughout this review. Anyway, like I said, I was in a huge Wildstorm mood, so I had this other book from the Wildstorm universe that I had not read, so I went ahead and read it, and this book picks up immediately from the previous volume, which was Majestic, Strange New Visitor, and that had some of the same creative team that this book has, but that was largely a DC Universe story, while this is much more of a Wildstorm story. Majestic, this character right here, he was stranded in the DC Universe. I don't really remember how it happened, but somehow he came to the DC Universe, and you can read all about that in Strange New Visitor, which I have read. I don't remember why I didn't do a review on it. It might have been a period where I had a lot of reviews stacked up, and so I just didn't feel the need to do another review. But I read that book a while back, didn't do a review on it, and this, fortunately, I wasn't too lost because I had already read that book. I will say, if you have not read Strange New Visitor and you just picked this up, you might be a little bit, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because the very first issue, you've got Superman and the Eradicator and Majestic, and they are coming back to the Wildstorm universe, and that's where the story begins. And so really all you need to know is that Majestic spent a little bit of time in the DC universe. And I will say, if you have read Strange New Visitor, that book made Majestic into an entirely different character than this book did. That one was much more about playing him up as an anti-Superman. He was there, for some reason Superman wasn't in Metropolis, so he was kind of there interacting with a lot of Superman's main cast and supporting characters and stuff, and that story was definitely playing him as almost what if Superman was a fascist tyrant, but not quite that bad. But there were some scenes there where it was definitely like, yeah, this is not Superman. He's very different from Superman. And in that regard, Strange New Visitor made Majestic out to be a very unlikable character. This book, in a lot of the same ways, it still is playing up these differences where he says and does things where it's like, okay, that's not something that Superman would do, but he's much more likable here, and it's really hard for me to explain without just going into spoilers. And even then, it would be hard for me to explain why I like him here, but I didn't like him in Strange New Visitor. But this is a character, and I keep comparing him to Superman because he's got a lot of the same powers, and when they're both together on screen, they even look similar. And if I'm not mistaken, in Final Crisis, which came after this book, in Final Crisis, I do believe that Majestic was considered to be the Wildstorm universe version of Superman, although he was not rocketed to Earth when he was a baby. He's actually an immortal warlord from the planet Kira, Khera. I think that's the planet he's from. He keeps using that, he'll say Skies of Kira. So I'm pretty sure that the planet was Kira. And he's got connections to a couple of the Wildcats characters. If I'm not mistaken, the character himself actually first appeared in the Wildcats way back at the birth of the Wildstorm universe. I guess I should get on to the book itself. I've talked a lot about the character, I've talked a lot about the backstory of the book. The book itself, this is, I believe, 6 issues. It's kind of hard to figure out how many issues are in here, but I can find it up here. There were 7 issues. This book is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's very good, but it ends on a cliffhanger. I am definitely going to seek out Volume 2. For this series, there were 3 volumes, and then if you count Strange New Visitor, which, like I said, that one is much more of a DC Universe story. This is more of a Wildstorm Universe story. Right down to, this does not have the DC Comics logo anywhere on the cover. Strange New Visitor does not have the Wildstorm logo anywhere on the cover. It has a DC Comics logo. This has the Wildstorm logo. So, a little weird. But anyway, other than the 3 volumes in this series and then Strange New Visitor, there's one more volume that I don't have, and I kind of would like to have it because Joe Casey did some writing on it, but I don't have it, and I don't know if I'll ever get it. But anyway, that's not important. So this story, Basically, I'm going to do a little bit of spoiling here, but Superman and Eradicator get Majestic back to his home world. Planet Earth is empty, and then hilarity ensues. Not really hilarity, but we find out that the entire population of planet Earth, all animal and human life of all kinds, has been kidnapped by this gigantic spaceship that is going around the universe collecting the life from every planet. And we find out it's not really a malevolent spaceship, but it is programmed to go to all these worlds and kidnap all the humans and all the sentient life on these worlds, because it is programmed to believe that there is this force of destruction going around and destroying all these planets. And at one point, there was a force of destruction going around destroying all these planets, but Majestic believes that that force has been gone for thousands and thousands of years, and that the spaceship is now going around collecting people when it really doesn't need to anymore. And then after he or he basically undoes this, he gets all the people back on Earth, then he finds out that most of humanity has now been possessed by the Daemonites. And if you ever read Wildcats, basically the whole background of that series was that most of the Wildcats were cherubim, or characters who are from the planet cherubim, and their sworn enemies were alien demon-looking creatures called Daemonites. And you can say a lot of things about Jim Lee, but you cannot say that he is subtle, because Daemonites, cherubim, kind of sort of sounds like demons and cherubim, or angels. So anyway, you find out that most of the planet has now been possessed by, not cherubim, Daemonites. And it turns out Majestic was in the DC universe a lot longer than he thought. I don't know how long, because he asks one character, he says, "How long was I gone?" And they tell him, well, the date is, and then whatever the date is, something 2006. And I don't know, that bit of information was very useless to me, because I don't know when Mr. Majestic left his world. So I think it was about a year. I think it had to have been at least a year, because these Daemonites, we find out they are from a parallel dimension. Because all the Daemonites from the Wildstorm dimension, they had already been wiped out. And these particular Daemonites are from another dimension, and they had a good little bit of time where they were able to take over the world. And then when Mr. Majestic, he thinks all is good and well, and then, the entire planet has been taken over by the Daemonites while I was gone. And hence the title, While You Were Gone. This whole volume is really just about Majestic kind of trying to get back in the groove of things, and it's being really hard for him. And I'm not going to spoil how, but like I said, this book ends on a cliffhanger, and it ends in a cliffhanger. Boy, does it. It's a very interesting way that the story ends, and I'm definitely wanting to pick up Volume 2, not only because I'm in a Wildstorm mood, but also this book was really good. If you are into the cosmic stuff, like Marvel Comics ever since like 2007 or so has been doing a lot of cosmic stuff, specifically from Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. Those guys worked on this. And they also did a lot of other stuff in the Wildstorm universe. I think they wrote The Authority and Wildcats for a little while. Maybe around this time, maybe a little later or earlier, I don't really know. But it was a little while that they were working on several different books. And this is pretty darn good. One thing I will say about it, it almost doesn't even feel like a superhero story. You've got this guy here very clearly dressed as a superhero, but at times it feels much more like a science fiction story. He's got like this camouflage suit that's really cool looking. He's got this really neat looking sword and all these a pill that will dampen down his powers and stuff like that. And during that whole scene, I was thinking, this doesn't seem like something you would see in a superhero comic. This seems more like something you would just see in a straight up science fiction movie. And of course, superhero comics for several decades have been pulling, they've been influenced from all sorts of sources, science fiction and fantasy, all numerous kinds of sources. So it's not mutually exclusive to say something feels like it's from a science fiction story. You can still say it also feels like it's from a superhero story. But I would say this feels more like a science fiction story than a superhero story, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that it definitely adds a level of freshness to this. Especially if you're like me and you read a lot of superhero stuff, sometimes you maybe can get kind of burnt out on it. So when you read something that is still rooted in the superhero genre, but is just far enough out there that it does something different, that's always a good thing, and it was a breath of fresh air for me. I highly recommend Majestic While You Were Out. I can't wait to read the next couple of volumes. I'm going to seek them out probably in the next few weeks. I've got some other Wildstorm books. I have about 12 others, not counting this one and the DV8 book that I reviewed last week. I've already read those books though, but I might go back and reread those books just so that I can have some more Wildstorm stuff to read in the meantime while I'm not buying more stuff, because I don't want to buy a whole bunch of stuff. But I definitely am going to be continuing my deep dive into the world of Wildstorm. I've been really enjoying what I've read so far. Even when I wasn't sure I would enjoy something, I have been. So I really enjoyed this. I think you guys would really dig this book. It's kind of sort of Superman-y, but it's also just different enough that if you don't like Superman, you probably will really like this. I think that it's something you definitely need to buy and check out. And that's all I had to say. So I will see you guys later in the week with some other kind of video. In the meantime, I'll catch you later. Have a great day.